Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
Sometimes we overlook the importance of energy in the body, and we forget that if we are lacking energy, that we're going to start to have some missteps or misfirings that occur. And many times we don't even realize the true impact that low energy states can actually have on our overall health and wellness, which is why I want to talk about one particular type of energy in the body today and why it's important to maintain this throughout our life, especially when we look at cardiovascular health, when we're looking at skeletal muscle health, even when we look even beyond that. And we have things like chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia. There is one thing in the body that we always want to make sure that we are paying attention to, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. I am Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, and let's get right to it. Let's talk about energy, one of our most important resources in the body. And we know that as we get older, our cellular energy levels begin to decline. I talk about this often in the setting of coenzyme Q10, for example. We know that CoQ10 is made in the body, but as we get older, sometimes, and even with medications, certain medications block the proper manufacturing of coenzyme Q10. So we know that this can start to diminish. So not only can you start to feel a little bit more fatigued or tired, but that's an indication that our cells are not functioning at their optimal performance, which is a huge, huge red flag. So we know that there is something in the body that plays a really critical role in maintaining and restoring energy levels, and that is ribose. So D-ribose has been shown to actually increase cellular energy production within the heart, within skeletal muscles, and we certainly understand that if we do not have adequate D-ribose, then we're going to have a hard time in terms of energy recovery. So even when we think about muscle fatigue, for example, and we know that ribose itself is something that is naturally occurring within our system. It is an essential component to our cellular energy management. And not only is it important for cell energy management, it is actually also yielding the ability to fend off oxidative stress because it also plays a role as an antioxidant. It can help to ease inflammation. It plays a role with gene regulation. So ribose is something that is very, very critical. And when we recognize that we have energy depletion that's occurring, most often we look at major things like heart failure, congestive heart failure, understanding that part of that pathophysiology behind heart failure comes down to ribose. And what ribose is actually doing, it is helping to string together your RNA, which is the ribonucleic acid. And then hence we have our DNA, and then we have our proteins. So we know that ribose plays a critical role in the translation of this very important genetic material so that the cell knows what it's supposed to be doing. It's the go-to guide for cellular function. So if we don't have enough ribose, then it makes sense that we're going to have this inadequate process that occurs in the body. So certainly we can look at cardiovascular disease as being a primary area to which ribose and lack thereof has been very much so studied. And so supplementation of D-ribose is a very good choice for those who are dealing with cardiac issues, such as when we look at coronary artery disease, when we look at congestive heart failure, when we look at even hypertension. We know that one of the ways in which ribose is working is not only for that production of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, but also when we look at the damage that can occur in the myocytes, the heart muscle cells, from oxidative stress or free radical damage, which then is going to drum up this extreme inflammatory response. So if we have high enough levels of ribose, then we know that the cells themselves are being protected in a sense from oxidative stress. They are allowing the cell to get its important and critical genetic material so it can do what it is supposed to do. And there are many different studies out there that show just how powerful ribose can be. They have actually done studies where they had people who had significant heart failure, and when they gave them ribose, they saw a big shift in terms of improvement in heart function. And it wasn't just on self-reporting of these patients that were included into the study. They were actually seeing this on echocardiograms. So that's a very strong way to understand the way that ribose is actually working to help to increase the heart muscle's energy. At the same time, when we think about the contractility of those heart muscles, the ability to pump, if those cells don't have their genetic material being processed right, because there's not enough ribose, then you can start to see why things go awry, and they can go awry very, very fast. So supplementation with ribose, obviously a big benefit when it comes to cardiac function, but we can also recognize that ribose is not just limited to cardiovascular health. Remember, it's this ribose that helps to play that role in RNA and DNA. So even looking at neurological studies in which the neuroprotective effects of ribose have been looked at, not only for, once again, restoring energy within the neurons, the brain cells, but also fending off that oxidative stress and inflammation that are associated with many different aspects of cognitive function and with the aging process itself. And as I had also mentioned, when we look at the setting of things like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, we certainly see this as, once again, being a significant issue that affects many people. And there was a study that was published all the way back in 2006 in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, looking at the use of D-ribose in chronic fatigue syndrome as well as fibromyalgia. And they found that the D-ribose was well tolerated by all of the patients that were given this. And they saw significant improvement along all of the different categories to which they were assessing. So for energy, for sleep, for mental clarity, for their pain levels, as well as for their general sense of well-being. And they came to the conclusion that D-ribose significantly reduced clinical symptoms in patients suffering from fibromyalgia as well as chronic fatigue syndrome. So many times when I've talked to folks and they will, kind of give the description of different symptoms that they're having and just low energy state, they've tried different things. Oftentimes they go to their primary doctor and they say, oh, maybe you're depressed. And they say, well, no, I'm not depressed. I just have no energy. And so oftentimes we will try out D-ribose. And after using D-ribose, voila. Because why is that? Because we're fending off oxidative stress. We're passing those genetic material, making that RNA to the DNA. We're making that process much more simplified. So when you think about things like restless leg syndrome, when we think about, as I mentioned, fibromyalgia, and then we look at the neuroprotective benefits, we look at the renal, the kidney protective benefits, all the different ways in which this powerful carbohydrate, which is basically what it is, it's a carbohydrate, but it plays this specific role in energy and cellular mitochondrial health. And if we are lacking in that, we are going to be lacking in many things. And so I just wanted to bring the ribose to your attention. So if you ever hear someone talk about it, hey, I tried this D-ribose. Maybe I use it after I go work out and it helps with my muscle recovery. Or, you know what? I feel like my energy levels are just really kind of down in the dumps. So I started to use D-ribose every single day. And now I feel like I have a little bit more pep every day. These are the ways in which we can see and assess how low your cellular energy production actually is. So, and it can work synergistically with coenzyme Q10. So remember, it's not just one thing in the body that's producing energy. It's all of these things, and they work synergistically together. So definitely go to our website and check it out. It's our Ribose complex, a really wonderful formulation. D-ribose does so much for our overall health and wellness, so I definitely encourage you to check it out. And there's so much science behind it. Really, really powerful stuff. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Invite Health podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Now, do make sure that you subscribe and you leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health podcast.